I had gotten severely into like Skinny Puppy and Ministry, and he was like, "What's gotten into you, man? What's up with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I only listen to Skinny Puppy and Ministry. My world is dark. You wouldn't understand." And he was like, "Well, I think I have something for you. It's called 9 Inch Nails. Would you want to get together and listen to some stuff?" And so I went over there and I listened to the first song he played was the Adrian Sherwood version of Down in It, which was the record version that he released. And it was absolutely amazing.
What up, it's Mr. X to the Z Exhibit.
What's up, guys? It's Andy Frisella.
This is your boy, Foul Monk.
This is Ryan Serhant.
This is Shingy.
Hi, it's Patrick McNiven.
This is Sonia Zarvatani.
This is Director X.
Hey, everybody, I'm Forbes Riley.
Yo, this is Goldie.
This is Amberly Lago.
This is Chris Voss.
Michael Francis here.
Yo, this is Charlie Tuna.
Hey, what's up? It's Billie Jean.
And you're listening to the RunGPG
podcast.
Well, I'm going to go hang out and listen to David's next podcast from the RunGPG.
You might hear something you like. Peace.
My guest today is a multi-talented musician, composer, songwriter, singer, programmer, and guitar player. Originally from Needham, Massachusetts, Richard Patrick is best known as the founder and frontman of the alternative rock band Filter. He's also a founding member of 9 Inch Nails, contributing to the early albums and working with Trent Reznor. With Patrick's distinct vocals and Filter's industrial alternative rock sound, the band quickly rose to prominence, earning critical acclaim and a dedicated following. I'm excited to talk about all that and more with the one and only Richard Patrick. Welcome to the RunGPG podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you here. As I was telling you, having a show like this, I get to talk to creatives, musicians, groups, and bands. It had a big impact on me personally, my musical taste so many years later. And of course, your work and your history have been a big part of my influence and so many others for decades, since the 90s, obviously. So again, really looking forward to discussing your story and your history in a little more detail. I'm excited about that. A little bit more of your backstory, though. I mentioned in the intro that you were originally from Needham, Massachusetts. I think I'm saying that right.
I was born in Needham, and then we moved 2 weeks later.
Is that okay? There we go. Because I was just going to say that's not where your journey and your history in music actually began. So tell us, where did it begin for you? What drew you to pursue a career in music and in the industry?
My father had a big stereo that he bought from Radio Shack called a Realistic stereo. That was the name brand, Realistic. And he used to play Neil Diamond, Hot August Nights, all the time in 1974 when he got the record. And I was electrified by this record. And there was a part in it where his guitar player was named Rich. And he would go several times through the concert. He would go, "Take it away, Rich." And I literally thought Neil Diamond was talking to me. You know what I mean? And I started to think about guitar and think about music. And I just got fascinated with it. Later on, when I was 9 years old, I asked my mom for a guitar, acoustic guitar. And she got me one for my birthday. And then 8 months later, I got an electric guitar for Christmas. And I've been playing guitar ever since. And it was wild. I knew way early that I wanted to be doing music. It was just a calling immediately. And I got into a whole bunch of other music when I was in my teens. And yeah.
So that's where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
And you never look back. You never look back. What at that time you mentioned Neil Diamond, but and then you talked about your teens there. What were your earliest musical influences?
Well, one of my first records that I got was like Van Halen, and I loved Eddie Van Halen's guitar playing. And then I had Kiss. But there was a monumental moment in my life when my brother Robert, the actor who is the Terminator on Terminator 2, he's the actor. That's my brother.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
My brother Robert Patrick is the actor who played the liquid metal cop in Terminator.
Right, like the most badass Terminator of all time.
Yeah, the liquid metal cop.
That's your brother?
That's my brother, yeah. You were today's years old to finding out that that's my brother, yeah.
Wow.
His name is Robert Patrick.
Yeah.
And
He was scary as hell. He was scary as hell.
Well, he was intimidating to grow up with. You know what I mean? He was 9 years older than me, and he was like a badass. He was always a badass.
I can't imagine. I'm just trying to picture it now. like your brother was the Terminator. Like it's wild.
Yeah. So Robert, this intimidating dude, came up to me. I was reading the cover of Kiss Alive 2 or something like that, and my brother knocked the record out of my hand, and he handed me the Clash London Calling, and he said, "Paul Stanley's a p***. From now on, you're gonna listen to the Clash. You're punk." And so I'm like, okay. You know, I was 9 or 10 or 13 or I don't know, 10. I think I was 10 years old. It was like 1980. It was like 1978 or something. No, I must have been 12 years old because it was in the early 80s. And I got into punk music or the Clash, I should say. And then that led to like, I also listened to a lot of Rolling Stones and the Beatles. Not as much Beatles as the Rolling Stones. And then I listened to, at some point, I got into U2, like in around 1983, 1984. I was really, really into U2. And then I got into like 86, I got into Skinny Puppy and Ministry. And that's when I really started listening to industrial music because it was so heavy, but it wasn't like heavy metal. It wasn't hair band, you know, and the hair band stuff just rubbed me the wrong way, you know. So I really gravitated towards the more punkish kind of outlaw riot starting, you know, disgruntled people.
Angry. Good for your brother. Like, honestly, good for your brother. Like, the Terminator literally told you to start listening to.
He didn't use the word either. He said something else, but he's like, "You will now listen to the Clash."
That's incredible. He's got great taste.
Yeah.
Who knew? It's funny though, because as we were saying, you know, before we started recording there, you know, the history of industrial electronic music specifically, it does come up a lot on the show. And I think just because the groups we get to interview, like we talked to Moby recently, and he talked a lot about the industrial influence and like the infancy of like electronic music at that time. And, you know, the music that was heavy in terms of industrial, it was Skinny Puppy, it was Ministry, Front 242, Frontline Assembly.
Mm-hmm. I listened to Front 242 as well.
Yeah, Front 242. I mean, really cool. I mean, I think Assimilate by Skinny Puppy is one of the greatest industrial tracks ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
That song never gets old ever.
Never.
You can listen to it over and over and over again. But it's crazy how revolutionary that genre became with just some samplers and synthesizers, distorted vocals. Like, what do you remember about that era? Like, it was such a golden age,
it was so avant-garde, and it was so. And Skinny Puppy and Trent Reznor took me to Skinny Puppy, and he's like, "Are you scared?" I'm like, "Kinda," you know, and. We were watching, you know, Here Comes Ogre. He walks out on stage and he's got blood and oil all over his face and his body. And he comes out there and he's just wearing this weird baseball cap. And the music is so avant-garde and percussive and killer sounds design and just this amazing assault on it's just abrasive and heavy but still cool because you can groove to it, you know what I mean?
They would put in
a dance groove in the middle of it, you know what I mean? And you know, like it was just wild.
That was the discussion we had with Patrick Codenese from Front 242, is that it was like, it was still cool because it wasn't like the mainstream, like you said, the metal stuff, right? So the industrial, you could be cool and listen to it.
But it was so electronic. Yeah. And see, the other element of electronic music, the most famous stuff was like Depeche Mode. Mm-hmm. And some of their stuff is downright goofy.
It was,
you know what I mean? Like dun, 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 you know, it's downright goofy.
Yeah.
But like, you know, even they had like Black Celebration, and that's when I got into Depeche Mode, because there's Music for the Masses is an incredible record, an amazing record. Mm-hmm. But I like the darker tougher, meaner stuff. You know what I mean? That's why I liked, when I liked U2, The Unforgettable Fire, it was meaner. It was really Irish, but it was meaner, but it was still beautiful, elegant, grand, graceful music. But they have a totally different realm in my book. They're just the coolest band ever. Like, I like their triumphant, amazing music that they put out,
Yeah, there was something about U2. Like, I remember it as well. There was something about U2, like, they were popular, they were mainstream, but they weren't. You know what I'm saying? Like they were just
another alternative, like different, like the Edge plays the guitar like it's this beautiful, echoey, amazing guitar playing that was so original. It was so mind-blowingly original. And same with the Clash guy, Mick Taylor. Is his name Mick Taylor? His name's Mick Taylor, right?
Well, there's Joe Strummer, Nick Taylor?
Nick Jones.
Nick Jones.
No, is it? We should look that up.
We gotta.
That's gonna drive me crazy.
Fact check this. We're gonna fact check it later.
But yeah, Joe Strummer and their guitar playing was very avant-garde and crazy and jangly but tougher and at the same time, London Calling. I mean,
well, you can hear the influences in Filter as well, like with your playing from that time, like even like The Cure and
Filter is weird because Filter, the thing with industrial, like Filter, I had to establish that I was something more than just a Nine Inch Nails derivative thing, because people assumed, oh, he's from Nine Inch Nails, guess what kind of music he's gonna make, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had to so I did like Hey Man, Nice Shot, but I also had songs like Stuck in Here and Spent and stuff that were, the first record was kind of industrial because we used a lot of drum machines and stuff like that. But I tried to take as much as I could from grunge as I could too. You know what I mean? I kind of wanted a little bit more. I love Drop D. And you can get different tunings like that. And that's kind of stealing from grunge at that point in time. But I love my industrial influence, but it's not nearly as much of an influence as it was when I was in Nine Inch Nails. You know what I mean? Like when I was in Nine Inch Nails, it was like, let's make it harder, let's make it meaner, let's make it tougher, let's make it, let's make it, I was constantly being tried for darkness.
Well, I get it. Like Filter's sound is very heavy, in some cases dark, which I want to get into in a minute here, but I want to kind of piece the timeline together here as well. So moving along, right, you connected at some point with Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails. What's the history of the group? How did that happen?
Wow. Well, Trent, he was the guy at Pi Keyboards and Audio in Akron, Ohio, who I knew, and Frank Vale and some other guys that I knew who worked at Pi Keyboards and Audio. And he was in this band called the Exotic Birds. And Trent was just kind of going with the flow with the Exotic Birds. The main guy was Andy Kubashevsky, who later went on to be in Stabbing Westward. And he was just kind of going with the flow. And then he made the decision, like, I'm going to leave. Like, I've got to quit. I've got to do my own thing. And he disappeared. Like, he literally disappeared. He went to work at Great Tracks and he didn't go out and he didn't do anything. He just worked really hard at making his own music. And during that's when he made Pretty Hate Machine. And so I had gotten severely into like Skinny Puppy and Ministry, and he was like, what's gotten into you, man? What's up with you? And I was like, yeah, I only listen to Skinny Puppy and Ministry. My world is dark. You wouldn't understand. And he was like, well, I think I have something for you. It's called Nine Inch Nails. Would you want to get together and listen to some stuff? And so I went over there and I listened to the first song he played was the Adrian Sherwood version of Down in It. which was the record version that he released, and it was absolutely amazing. But I was kind of like, oh my God, is this rap? Are you rapping now? Like, are you rapping? And then he was like, no, check it out. I've got more stuff. And he played me some other stuff. But then at some point, he played me something he was working on called Head Like a Hole. And that was like, yeah. I mean, there was still some parts in it that I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't really driving to, but the chorus was amazing. And the bass line in the verse was just amazing. Down, 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 down. And so he had already been working with Chris Vrenna. Chris Vrenna was like he was going to play drums, but he was also his assistant in the studio. And then Sean Bevan was actually working on it too in the studio. And he was a friend of mine from the act because he was always, he was everybody's front of house guy. And then there was various keyboard players that would come in and just kind of play what Trent had already written in those early days. But yeah, he just was like, okay, we got a gig. We got a gig. We're going to go on tour with Jesus and Mary Chain. And we're going to do this thing called Dance Party USA. And
it wasn't called that. Was it actually called that?
On USA Network, it was called Dance Party USA. It was a TV show for teens dancing. That's that famous footage. Have you ever seen
Trent Reznor? I've seen it. That was that?
Yeah. And he's wearing a scrunchie.
Yes, I do remember. I've seen that footage.
Yeah, that was Dance Party USA. But we knew it was a joke. We were like, we're going to show up and it's going to be ridiculous. So like we're going to be laughed out of there because we were so totally not like Dance Party USA, but it was really funny. And we were like, literally, it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. They were shooting this thing and we started drinking beers early, and because we used to drink like gunfighters back then. And, we were drinking and we did the show, and at one point I fall off the stage, and it's super hilarious. And but yeah, that was like one of our first things that we did. But then we started playing shows around town, and I remember just like we went on tour with Jesus and Mary Chain, and that was really cool because I think we started establishing ourselves as like something real.
So cool. Yeah.
And then we came back to Cleveland and played a headlining set at Cleveland, and it was like totally sold out. Like it was like literally 1,600 people in the Fantasy nightclub, which was a tiny little place. And it was amazing. I mean, those early days were really crazy.
The history is just incredible. I think Trent was onto something with even the name and the branding, with the NIN and everything. Yeah. It was something that kids wanted on their shirts. They wanted it on the, you know what I mean? Like the branding was there too. It was like that.
No, so, he hit home runs all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, smart guy, obviously.
All the time. Yeah. I mean, the logo was something that you just wanted to put on your shirt. You just wanted to wear it. Like
NIN. I remember writing it on my
merch, and we'd be like, "This is cool. I'm wearing it." Like, yeah.
Well, if you can find those vintage 9 Inch Nails shirts now,
I have one.
Do you?
I have one white one. Yeah, it was off the Sin tour that my dad bought.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
the OG ones I think $1,000 is probably what they're selling for, something like that. Like they're really expensive. But here's a question: what was it like working with Trent Reznor and being a part of 9 Inch Nails during those formative years? Like, what stands out the most?
Well, he taught me a lot, and I just wanted to bring the element of punk, like the you, like as much as I possibly could. And there was a moment where he was like, okay, this is the song Terrible Lie. And the guitar part goes B, C sharp. And I was like, okay, B, C sharp, B, bam. That's how it goes. And he's like, but you can't play it like, B, C sharp. You got to play it like you. He's like, this is heavy. you know, and my little 21-year-old mind was just like, absolutely punk rock, fully, commit. Yeah, you're right. Like, this is it. And there was just a lot of moments like that, where we're going for it, dude. We're not gonna, like, that was the thing that I really, really wanted to bring, was like total commitment, like fully, not just playing a guitar part, but being as dedicated to the music as possible physically, like just be a presence on stage. But it was awesome. Just doing rehearsals and preparing for everything, and Trent knew what he wanted, you know what I mean? But he was also open to like ideas, like, I would mess around with different guitar sounds and stuff like that. For like the song Ring Finger, I played a kind of a Strat sounding guitar, and he was okay with that. And
yeah, so the creative process was all Trent, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean,
for the most part, like.
My big thing was I showed up after he recorded the first record. I was constantly just like, let's make this heavy and intense. And, like he said, with Terrible Lie. And so that's what I brought into the band. And then in the record Broken, he listed me as like an influence. Like, he was influenced by his live band, and he made this heavy record, Broken. And that's pretty much all I did. I was like, I just wanted it to be heavy. I just wanted it to be mean and tough but passionate, you know what I mean? As well as, and so, I'm not saying he listened to me at all. I'm just, you know what I mean? I'm saying that I feel like, from my perspective, I just wanted to make it intense as hell and engaging and tough. And that was pretty much because I would show up later, and he would be like, well, check this out. This is a song called Wish, and I already played guitar on it. Don't worry about it. And and we're doing the video tomorrow, and that's why you're here. And I would listen to the song Wish for the first time, and like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that's, but you can see, like, my creativity I wasn't really doing much, you know what I mean?
No, but
that's what eventually kind of led me to leave, was the fact that, like, I have something to offer myself, and I wanted some ownership, you know what I mean? I wanted to
100%
be a part of it 100% and own something, and own a part of it. You know what I mean? I wanted to be more.
Right.
Than just the live guy playing guitar.
Yeah, I get it. And I mean, if you're listening to Skinny Puppy and Ministry, that's a big influence. Of course, you're going to want to make it darker and angrier and, and all that. But from what I understand, you quit Nine Inch Nails. What was the story behind that? Like, what inspired you to break away and start Filter?
It was what I just mentioned. I wrote Hey Man, Nice Shot, and record companies were all about it and wanted to sign me. And Trent didn't know that. And so when I went to Los Angeles to work on the Downward Spiral, or be a part of the live show, or do whatever I was supposed to do there, prep for the live shows and stuff like that, I kind of made secret meetings and basically, fortified my leaving by getting a record contract with Warner Brothers, and getting a new manager, and then having a new lawyer as well. And, there was a couple of things that, happened that was, unsavory. And, it was definitely kind of a fight, kind of a situation, but ultimately it was just, I have something more to say than just being a live guitar player, and I want to do my own thing. You know what I mean? And it's called Filter,
Yeah. Interesting history. So you leave Nine Inch Nails, you start your own group, Filter. And at the time it's described as a blend of like industrial and alternative rock. That's what, the critics are describing it as. How do you describe Filter sound at that time when you started the band? And like, how did you go about developing the unique sonic identity back then? Because it did have a distinct sound, right? Like, what was your creative process? And What are your thoughts on the original sound of Filter?
Early on, when I was like 17 or something, I tried to get a record deal with 3 a.m. or no, not 3 a.m. A&M Records. And their big complaint was, you sound way too much like U2. You have to sound original. And it broke my heart. And when I was in Nine Inch Nails, I mean, Trent was fully like, we're totally original. Like, it's not Ministry and Skinny Puppy. It's not a derivative thing that sounds similar to that. There was a lot of songwriting in it. Like, I mean, he worked the songwriting angle, really heavily. Chorus, verse, bridge, the whole thing. And when I started working on the Filter stuff, I was just really like, okay, I want to make it heavy. I want to have songwriting, but I also really love big guitar sounds, like that are just driven guitar sounds. Because I was also listening to a lot of Pantera as well. And, I just love guitar. Chung, 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 chung. Like, I love that deep sounding guitar parts. And that was pretty much it. And, as you listen to Filter, you can see that like the first record was kind of industrial, it's the most industrial record we ever had, other than Crazy Eyes, which was, I consider that to be pretty industrial. But title of record, it became way more rock band like sounding. And Take a Picture was just completely out of character for the whole thing. And, but that was pretty much, I think it was because I was hanging out with Darcy from the Smashing Pumpkins. And I saw the lighter side of life as well. And my U2 kind of influence came at me, and Take a Picture was born. And I wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore a softer side as well, because Stuck in Here was on Short Bus. So I was like, well, I did something soft on Short Bus and that went platinum. So I'm allowed to kind of experiment and see how light I can get. And, the big complaint from the record company was like, well, this is such a departure. And I'm like, I know it is, but like, Welcome to the Fold is not. Welcome to the Fold is a hell of a song. And
Welcome to the Fold is one of the heaviest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. Like that song. I mean, if you want to go to the gym and get pumped or just get it out there, like that's a great song to listen to. I love it. I always like to, ask, the history of some of the most iconic songs and albums of the musicians and groups I interview. Hey Man, Nice Shot. We were talking about it earlier. Hey Man, Nice Shot, one of Filter's most iconic songs. Did you say you wrote that first, or can you share the story behind its creation and the inspiration for its lyrics as well?
Yeah, I was just in my mom and dad's house in South Carolina, and they had lent me, and I was with some friends. And I just remember coming up with that guitar riff. And it was based off of a Lard song by Ministry, Al Jorgensen and Jella Biafra. They have a song that's called Pork Boy that goes like it's triplets on the 12th fret. And I remember playing that and being like, that's so cool. It's so repetitive, and it reminds me of U2 in a good way, like the the guitar playing in U2. And then I just kind of moved it down the fretboard, and it was like and I just kept moving it down the fretboard, and it just all made sense. And then skip ahead a month or two later, we had a bass line on there that I didn't like, and so I changed the bass line to the intro bass line that we all know and love. Then it became time to sing, and I remember having tons of guitars all the way through the verses and stuff, playing whatever, and I just hit the mute buttons on the guitar on the 8-track, and it was like the whole thing cleared up. And it was just drums, bass, and my voice. And I thought, man, that sounds cool. And then when it kicked back into the chorus, I was like, and so there was a lot of writing with the equipment as well. It wasn't just, on the guitar. It was like you had to work the equipment that we were using. And we programmed the drums, and we did a whole bunch of other stuff. And finally, I stared at the microphone for like a month, like just horrified of like, can I sing? I've been telling everybody I'm an okay singer, like, can I sing? And I finally, like, over like, I think it was like the whole summer, I had waited and waited and waited and goofed off and drank and went and put in bay and hung out with my friend. Like, I literally came up with all these things to do. And then finally I was like, I got to do this. And so I went into the studio and knew that I was totally alone. And I just started writing the lyrics. I wish I would have met you. Now it's a little late. What you could have taught me, I could have saved some face. And I was thinking about the public suicide of Arba Dwyer, like why he did that. And then I got to the chorus and I was like, okay, I know I want to sing something high. So I started singing, hey man, or a man has gone. Hey man, have fun. Like, sarcastically saying like, I'm glad you killed, like, good for you. You killed yourself. Great. You screwed up everybody and you killed yourself. Bit like, what are you thinking? Kind of thing. After getting the vocals done. And then at the very end of the song, I was like, I wish I would have met you. I was a little concerned that I sounded too much like Perry Farrell on, he has a song called Ocean Size. I wish I was ocean size. And so I went, I wish I would have met you. And I was worried that like it sounded too similar to him. And there were moments where I was like, is this too grungy? Is this too much like Soundgarden? But I was like, I don't care. It's so awesome. It sounded so good to me. And when I finished the song, I played it for some friends of mine that had heard earlier stuff that we had this song called, I think it was called Thorns or something like that. And it sucked. And like my friends were like, sure. Yeah, Rich. Like, yeah, dude, I guess it's okay. But when I played him, Hey Man, Nice Shot, they were like, dude, this is good. And like every person I played it to was like, holy shit, Rich, this is really, really like, kind of like, wow, like Rich, your life has changed.
Yeah.
Like you're totally, like they all were like, wow, this is like you winning the lottery kind of thing. You know what I mean? When I was done, they were like, this is like a hit. This is going to be huge. Like just random friends of mine, Terry Galvin, Matt Travenchkar, like Scott Kern, my friend from Cleveland, Ohio. Like a lot of people were just like, damn, this is really good. So weeks later, when I played it for my friends who lived in Hollywood, they were like, you could totally get a record deal with this. And so there was a couple close calls. Someone who was scoring a movie wanted to use Hey Man, Nice Shot for one of my brother's movies, and he offered to buy the song, including the publishing, for $700. And I knew, like, absolutely not, like, no way am I gonna give this song away for $700. And there was a lot of weird little close calls like that where I had to be super careful.
It's such an iconic song, like, decades later, it's still an song every time you hear it.
Yeah.
Every time you hear it. Like never, those iconic, like, timeless songs like that, years later, you never get tired of listening to them. You created one. It's one of your first, like you did, you created it. There's that one, a few others.
I like to think I created a few.
You did. You absolutely created a few. That one though. I feel like everybody had that one, like Trent had, Head Like a Hole. It was Head Like a Hole. Like the whole album was good, but it was Head Like a Hole was the one that kind of went, okay.
Yeah.
Right. When we were talking at front, it was Headhunter. It was that one song, right? Or, Moby, I remember the one he was talking about recently, but he had the one song that did it for him, right? But then, like you referenced it, a title of record, the sophomore album, it was more refined and experimental, right? So why the evolution in the music, and you kind of touched on how critics responded, but how did fans respond to it?
title of record was a different scenario because I'd been on tour with some guys. Gino Leonardo, Matt Walker played drums on the first Short Bus record. And I decided maybe we should have some real drums on some of the songs on some of the records. And so I started to expand the sound into more of a traditional, 4-piece, and with still the bells and whistles of programming, like, computer programming that, is the industrial kind of vibe. And I also had this guy named Ray DeLeo, who was he ran the equipment, but he also was like a programmer, and he did a lot of the sound design and stuff like that. And, but Tidal was an opus. I mean, it was like I started writing for it right after I got back. And the first song I wrote, I think, was Captain Bligh. And messed around with other producers and did some stuff. And then I finally told everybody, like, all I need is like someone to run the equipment so that I can sit back and do all these ideas that I have in my head. And they granted me that. And I got a studio that I put together with my friend Doug Pelletier, who we took a loft space and we put 2 control rooms in it, or a live room and a control room. And then we had a rehearsal hall right next to it. And it was like, amazing. I was like, this is my clubhouse. And so I threw a ton of parties there, had a great time, but started while I was dating Darcy Retsky Brown at the time. I just started making as much music as I possibly could. And there was some other great little moments, like Gino Leonardo came in and he was like, well, I have this song called, this song that I have, and it was It's Gonna Kill Me. And it was all the music was done. Like, it sounded amazing. I'm like, this is amazing. All we have to do is put vocals on it. So like, I said, bring the tracks over, put them into my computer. Let's go. And then we added drums to it and live drums, and Steve Gillis did an amazing job putting live drums to it. And there was just a lot of freedom like that. And, but I was really kind of holding my cards close to my chest and kind of keeping control of as much of it as I could. Although Gino did a great job of like overdubs on guitar. The song Skinny, he primarily came up with most of the music for that. I made a big edit on it that created the chorus for the song. I remember telling him, like, no, we do this 4 times and boom, it's a huge chorus. And he's like, okay. And songs like I'm Not the Only One, but Take a Picture was literally, I had a guitar and I played 4 chords. That was the chorus. And then I went back and I came up with the verse guitar part and then the 4 chords on for the chorus. And I remember thinking to myself, is it that easy? Like, is it that easy to write something that good? You know what I mean? Like, like it's shocking how easy and fun and sweet it was to just take a picture, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. Like, other people like Gino tried to record a little bit of it. And I was like, no, wrong tempo. The tempo is 120, like, like it's faster. And I just remember jumping into it. And then it came time to write the lyrics and sing it. And it was just stream of conscious. I was trying to fill up the tape. I was trying to sing as much as I could without really thinking about the lyrics. And, I wake on my airplane, my skin is bare, my skin is theirs, So
it was just a stream of consciousness.
Yeah. And then the chorus, I remember thinking, could you take my picture? Cause I won't remember, because it was all about my alcoholism. I was living like full blown alcoholic. Later, I realized it was a total cry for help because of my alcoholism. But at the time, I thought I was just being artsy. You know what I mean? I thought I was like, no one's going to get what I'm talking about. And then, of course, in interviews, I'm like, yeah, sure. It's about me getting naked on an airplane, blah, 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 which really happened. It's just 90% of that was bullshit.
Yeah. So would you say that the influence of that music at that time had a lot to do with you're saying it, with your personal life, right? Like who you were dating and, what was happening at that time.
Yeah, it was definitely, I was living in the moment, and the record was autobiographical. You know what I mean? Like when Darcy ended up leaving me, like that's when I wrote "I'm Not the Only One," and when I wrote,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
Not the-
I didn't know that.
we had like a breakfast together, and then I was totally. She was like, "Well, I think I want to try and see some other people," and blah blah blah, and I was like, she was already married, and I was already like, dude. This is crazy. And so I thought she was breaking up with me. And so I went directly to the studio, and I remember taking some medicine and getting in front of the microphone, and we already had the music, and I just sat there and I just riffed like I did one or two takes where I was just kind of mumbling and singing totally stream of conscious. And we put the words together, you know, we did a comp, as they say, and it was so spellbinding, you know what I mean? It was so fresh and real that like I didn't want to go back and make it. I wanted to do what U2 did for like Elvis Presley in America off of The Unforgettable Fire, where it was just kind of stream of conscious and it was great. And remember getting done with it and just being like, why, and crying and kind of being spent on it. And we just were like, let's see if we can't put this together, and we'll just use it as a demo. And then, but everyone who heard it was just like, my God, it's so captivating. And
It is.
so that was just one of those things where it was like, you know,
Yeah.
just-
Another iconic song.
yeah.
So you got two.
It's Gonna Kill Me was because this other girl that I was kind of hanging out with was feeding me tons of medicine that was not prescribed by a doctor. And you know, It's Gonna Kill Me, you know, like it just came to my head, you know what I mean? And but there's so many other songs on it that Cancer was my Earth Day song. Like we were talking about Earth Day back in, you know, 97, 98, we were talking about the Earth Day, you know, how man's polluting the world, and like, you know, cancer, and how we are cancer. And that was kind of my protest song for that. And it just goes on. And I just remember thinking, and Welcome to the Fold was like, well, so much of the record is this moody kind of stuff. Where's the rock? You know, so I wrote Welcome to the Fold in the tail end of writing, and I was super excited about it. And we did Welcome to the Fold, and we tracked it, but we got to this middle section, and I literally it was 17 minutes long or something like that. It was like 10 minutes long, this middle section that was all Mama Give Me My Medicine. And what I did was I sang the song sober and did all the hard work on this A-OK and everything like that, and sang the verses and choruses sober. But I promised myself that I would take mushrooms at midnight and sing whatever popped into my head for this middle section. And Ray DeLeo was just like, okay, let's go have some dinner. We grabbed some dinner, came back, and I tripped out on mushrooms and came up with this whole middle section, which we used probably like 1% of. And I wonder if we have those tracks still around, floating around.
You promised yourself you'd take mushrooms at midnight.
Yeah, I promised myself I'd take, well, at night, you know, it's like, because you could mood like that studio so well with like all these different lights that we had. And it was all mood lit, and there was a crowd inside the control room just like laughing their balls out. Like I was funny as hell back then. Yeah. And like, Mama, give me my medicine, and you know, and yeah.
What an incredible history, Richard. Like what an absolutely incredible history. It's mind blowing to think about all that you've been through, the history of the music, and you know, just the influence that your music and music that you've been involved with, the names you're mentioning at that time that you were working with, and the different influences to this day, right? How
Mm-hmm.
they've stood the test of time. The other thing that was interesting about Filter's branding or Filter's music was the videos. They were praised for their artistic direction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the visual storytelling, which I'm obsessed with, is the visual and the branding. How did you collaborate with directors and artists to bring your songs to life visually? Like, what was the inspiration?
I was pretty much wide open to the video stuff. There was one video where I kind of meddled, and I think it hurt. It was Where Do We Go From Here? But there was all the other videos. It was like, I called up Kevin Kerslake. I was like, I saw, your Smashing Pumpkins video for the first song on their record. Oh
yeah. It's not another one. Yeah. What's the name? What's the name?
That's gonna kill me. And that's what in part inspired like Take a Picture.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Billy was like, push yourself, Richard. You gotta push yourself and do some different stuff. You can't just do you can't be a one-trick pony. And I was like, okay, damn.
Yeah.
And he's like, and it's all easy. You can do it. You can topple it. You can topple it. That's what he used to say.
You can topple it.
You can topple it, Rich. You can do it. Man,
the history, the history that you have with, these frontmen. Like, you're a frontman yourself, right? Just it's crazy to think about.
I'm also really excited, and I don't mean to say like, I don't mean to bring it up out of turn, but like, I'm also really super proud of the record we put out, The Algorithm. There's been a lot of records that I put out, and I feel they're pretty good, but like The Algorithm really kind of brought it back for me. It was a great record, and I'm super proud of it. And it to me, it fortified what I've always believed, which is that, I still got it.
Oh, you definitely still got it. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. And again, some of those iconic, albums, right. And songs, like to this day, when you create such an incredible, body of work and art and things like that. And when they stand the test of time, right. They last longer than you do, so many years later. You touched on it, and you're pretty open and vocal about talking about, your struggles with addiction and things like that. And we do like to get deep on the show if we, from time to time, if it helps others. Like,
sure.
Looking back, what led to the issues? Like, why, did you have those issues with drugs and alcohol, and what eventually helped you correct the situation?
The drinking became crazy binge. I had no self-control at a certain point. So I was doing other things. I was doing some drugs, and I would stay up for 3 days, and it was fun as hell. I mean, I got to be honest with you. When you're 27 and you've done everything, and you're a rock star, and you're hanging out with your friends, and you stay up for 3 days, it was. I got to say, it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. But the reality is I would drink to come down, and then I would be really hungover for like a day or two. And eventually, like, I started running out of, I just got to this point where like I was drinking, but I would wake up in the morning, like really early, like at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And I would be like, well, it's still dark out. Maybe I should crack a beer open, and then I would get drunk. And I would be drunk at 10 a.m., like wasted, and, I couldn't do anything. I would, make an ass out of myself. The humiliation of being an alcoholic is just awful. And I was totally, completely alcoholic. And I knew it in my soul. Like, I knew that this was wrong. I literally could not believe that I could get sober. Like I literally was like, so I called a friend of mine, Mark Pollock, who had gotten sober, and he said, Rich, I don't know if it's going to work for you, but it totally worked for me. And it was the best thing I ever did. And I just heard that. And Mark used to party as hard as me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if he can do it, I can do it. And then I called up my now wife, Tina, and to ask her to come and get me or come and visit me on tour. And she showed up a day later she showed up that actually, no, I called her in the blackout and she showed up that morning and was like, I'm here. And she literally like, I'm here to help you, you know? And I just was like, you know what? I can't take this. I gotta quit. So I quit the tour and sent everybody home, and everyone was floored. But it was the only way I could really save my life, was to just quit it completely and utterly, and just go to California and see what they had to offer. And so I went to Promises, and that's where I met Chris Cornell. And Chris Cornell was in rehab with me, and I was about to leave, and he goes, Rich, don't do it. This is the only game in town. This is the only deal in town. This is the only way to get sober, is to do it this way. You got to try it. And so I listened to him and focused on being sober and doing what they told me. And I focused on listening to people, and I did what they told me. I followed and just succumbed to the program. And it was the best decision I ever made. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I'm super proud of it. And I've told my story. And when people reach out to me on Instagram, they go, hey, I heard your story and I'm really blown away, and I'm going to try and get sober. And I try and work with them as much as I possibly can. And I've made some friends that, you know, have been sober because of, you know, they were inspired by my story. And so I'm just super grateful of that, because that's what, you know, I was inspired by Chris, you know, and that's how sobriety works, is you are sober and other people are attracted to that.
Yep.
And
that's interesting. What a incredible story. I appreciate you breaking that down. I thank you very much for doing that. You know, if anybody's, you know, listening or watching, and they, you know, might inspire them to make a change, you know, if you could help, you know, somebody that you know, goes a long way. It really does. Chris Cornell.
You really, 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 really have to believe in yourself, and you just have to succumb to the fact that, like, you're powerless. And the only way to do it is just to hang out with your kind.
Right.
And Chris later ended up killing himself. And that's what keeps me sober, is the fact that, like, Chris died. And so I have to, like, I have to stay sober in his honor, so that, you know, so that I learned from his mistakes, you know, and
yeah.
So
no, I appreciate that. No, thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate that. You know, as we've been discussing, you know, you've been around for a long time. You're a veteran of, you know, we talked about industrial, alternative rock. What are your thoughts on the current state of the music industry and maybe those genres, and where do you see it going?
The music industry is really crazy right now, because back in the day, if you were lucky enough to get a record contract, which was hard, they took care of you. Like, from my perspective, I mean, not necessarily in the early days with Nine Inch Nails, but from my perspective, my record company, Warner Brothers, was a godsend. They were absolutely amazing. I asked for the moon, and they were like, sure, you can do whatever you want. We're here. It's an artist-oriented label. We do what you want us to do. And I'm like, okay, so I want to grab $30,000 worth of equipment, go back to a little house in Cleveland, Ohio, and make my record, and then have someone else mix it later on. And they're like, done. You know, and like, I remember going through my equipment and getting all this fancy stuff, Eventide 4000s, and, you know, just amazing stuff. And they bought all of it and put it together in road cases. And I went across the country out to Cleveland, Ohio, and sat there and with Brian Leeskang and worked on these records, or the first record, Short Bus. And I just remember being taken care of. And then, you know, I had money. They gave me a pretty much an allowance to sit there and work on. They gave me an advance, you know, which I used to live. And then it was like, hey, let's do a video. Here's $300,000 for that. who do you want to work with? I want to work with Kevin Kerslake. He did the Smashing Pumpkins video that I like, and they were like, great, here's his treatment. I get in touch with this guy. He gives me his treatment. I'm like, I love it. Let's do that. That's the video for Hey Man, Nice Shot. And they put someone on the road with us who was a liaison between all the people that we were supposed to meet, all the press we were supposed to do. Yeah. And so she lived on the bus with us, which was crazy because we were pretty wild back then, but it was amazing. And now you just don't have that anymore. So the way they're doing it now is if you have a TikTok following of like 100,000 people and you have your own built-in following already, you can get a record deal, but I don't know how much they take care of anybody anymore. I think they just kind of take their money. They put the records out. I don't know if they have A&R people. I don't know. Like, it's bizarre. Yeah,
you hear stories from different ones about the current state of the industry, and it's kind of a mess. It's all ham-hocked. But like you said, it's not so much about making great music. It's about following and money, right? Is the way to kind of look at it. I mean, it's always been about making a profit, but it's a little bit different these days, right? Where it's like attention.
It's wild because like Billie Eilish is truly one of the most talented. Her and Phineas are some of the most talented people ever.
Right.
And they made it by going viral off of their own, iCloud, right. SoundCloud stuff. Yeah. And I remember my daughter told me about Billie Eilish when Billie Eilish was 16.
Yeah.
Back in 2018. I'm still doing that. 19 back in 2000, whatever it was, 17 or 18 or 16 or somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's social media following, right?
So the cream is rising to the top, but like it's wild how different it is. And rock is not that big anymore. That's the sad thing, is rock music isn't really that big anymore. And it's expensive to be in a rock band. It's very expensive to be in a rock band. You make noise, so you have to find a place that'll allow you to make noise in. Basically what I've done was I started off using a little studio in my house to make the beginnings of the record. Then I would go to a studio and flesh it out and add guitar, overdubs and stuff like that, and do drums in a studio. Then I would go to a mixer and spend 6 weeks with a mixer, Ben Gross, and we had a place to stay every time we did anything. And now, because budgets are gone, I have my own little studio that I have, and then all of my bandmates have their own private home studios. And so I'll come up with the major piece of like the main piece of music, and then I'll sing it, and then like I'll send it out to my guitar player Bobby, and he'll play bass on it and sing overdubs or sing background harmonies or something like that. So we send it through Dropbox, and that's how we work on it. Eventually it'll come time to do drums, and we'll just spend 2 days with a great drummer who will flesh it out on drums for 2 days. And that's the most expensive part about doing a record these days, is just, but it's like my monthly rent and, for my little studio. And I'm moving into movie scores as well.
Oh, you are? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that supplements my studio time as well. But it's wild. I mean, we made, the algorithm was probably 15 grand, and the amalgamut cost 600,000.
Wow.
Title of record. I mean, people are like, oh boy, those first 3 records, man, they were amazing. Yeah. Each one of them costs like $400,000 to make.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. You referenced the fact that rock's not as popular, or what did you say? It's not as
big as it used to be.
Not as big, but what's interesting? I read
my favorite artist, real quick, just to
Yeah.
as an example, my favorite artist right now is Rez, R-E-Z-Z. She's an EDM artist. And then I have this other singer that I really love, Scarlord, who is just this amazing kid from the Midlands of England. And he's just got this insane raspy scream. And it's like trap metal.
Really?
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because like it's, we're just, the nice thing about the internet and the, social media and things like that is we're discovering all these really cool sounds and groups. A lot of the stuff I've been listening to, I couldn't even tell you who they are because they've been curated on, Bandcamp and, what's the other one? SoundCloud, like you said, and a few others, is where you're hearing it or somebody's sending it to you or it shows up in a feed or a mix. But the interesting thing is like, I was reading that the most the highest grossing tours the last few years were Depeche Mode, The Cure, the 40 plus crowd. It's almost like we still want that sound from the 80s and 90s. We're craving it, and they're the highest grossing tours. The Cure played, I think it was at 2 or 3 nights in Montreal where I was, sold out. Couldn't get a ticket. Nothing.
Yeah.
It was not, crazy, right? It's a 40 plus crowd that's spending the money.
Well, Filter's having a resurgence now. I mean, Filter's definitely having a resurgence, and I'm just happy to be here.
100%.
Happy to make it happen.
So here's the wrap up here, Richard. I appreciate your time so much, but a couple questions left. What's next for you and Filter? You just got back from the world tour, but what current projects or tours should we know about?
Well, I'm doing Freaks on Parade again with Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper in Ministry. That's so successful. They brought it back for a second year. Then I'm working on new music constantly. I'm not sure when I'm going to put out another record, but I think it's going to be fairly quickly because I already have 15 songs and it only takes, 10 to make a record. I'll announce at some point that I'm going to release a new record when I figure it all out. But then I do a new movie I'm going to be working on that stars Nicolas Cage called Gunslinger.
Cool.
And,
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm constantly working. I'm constantly doing stuff.
Do you have some equipment too that you personalize, don't you?
Yeah, I have this. It's my guitar tone from Short Bus in a pedal.
Okay. And
the best way to run this thing is you plug your guitar into here, into the input, and then in the output, you put it into the effects return into your amplifier and bypassing the effects loop and bypassing the preamp on it. And this thing becomes your preamp and it sounds amazing.
And where do we get that?
You can get this at filterpedals.com.
Filterpedals.com. Okay, we'll make sure.
I'm sure it's going to be Filter Pedal.
Filter Pedal. We'll make sure before we release.
Yeah, filterpedal.com.
Filter Pedal. Okay, and here's the final question, Richard. If you could have dinner with any 3 people in history, past or present, who would they be and why?
Benjamin Franklin, FDR, and John Lennon.
Whoa. So we got Benjamin Franklin, FDR.
Yeah.
John Lennon.
Yeah.
What a dinner table.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
You wouldn't do Trump, Kanye,
and Rick Fuentes. What's his
Rick Fuentes? Yeah, I don't know.
No, I could imagine just beating shit out of all of them if I had to. I mean, like mentally, I would just like, here we go.
Listen, dude, after next tour, I'd love to have you back and promote that if, down the line, because I had an absolute blast with this conversation. It was
cool.
It was such a cool history. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, your music, and Filter's always on my playlists, always,
Fantastic.
So I'm glad we could make this happen, brother. Where do you want the people to find you and follow you?
Instagram, filter_Richard Patrick.
Nailed it, brother. Anyways, enjoy the day, man, and get some rest after the world tour.